We live in a critical time. But the enemy will tell you we live in uncertain times. Most certainly, my friends, this is not true. There is a very real and imminent threat, not only to our worldly existence, but our very spiritual salvation as well. There is no doubt that we are under grave threat. Unfortunately, the powers that be will tell you that they know that something exists that is advanced yet unknown and uncertain. And maybe, just maybe, you should give them more time to research and review and compile yet another report. I'll say that again. These so-called intelligence agencies will tell you that they know that there is something that is unknown, uncertain, and they need more time to research, review, and compile. Never mind the fact that they have had 70 years of these so-called unknown aerial phenomena floating around our skies, being reported, reviewed, compiled, and yet they will still claim that they're unknown and uncertain. Now I know that the reason you clicked on this video, and many others like it, is because you're looking for answers. So are you willing to wait another 70 years to be told the exact same thing that they've been telling us since World War II, since Roswell, New Mexico, since Project Blue Book, and countless other acknowledgments that end up in the same place? Nowhere. No, my friends, I am tired. I am tired of waiting. Are you? Are you tired of waiting? Are you like me, unwilling to wait another 70 years to be told the exact same thing? Now, if you're the type of person who is okay to wait the 70 years, then God bless you. Go ahead and leave. Go back to your flock of sheep. This is not the place for you. This is not the channel for you. If you prefer lies and avoidance and other such nonsense with your breakfast in the morning, please just go back to CNN, Washington, whatever. We'll catch up with you in a few decades or more. 70 years by the look of it. This needs to be a place for free thought and truth. That's what I'm trying to start here. But before I get carried away, let me remember my manners. I am Mary Thaddeus, devoted wife of James Thaddeus, whom I've been married to for over 30 years. We are parents, grandparents, law-abiding patriots, and most importantly, we are God-fearing Christians. Both of us have ministered in the past in various capacities, but currently my dear James is working through his doctorate in the field of xenotheology, while I am being the dutiful wife and supporting him in this endeavor. What is xenotheology, you may ask? Well, it is the intersection between our earthly religion and the science and reality that lies outside of our atmosphere. Now, there's a lot of talk about humans becoming a multi-planetary species, but will Christianity be a multi-planetary religion? Will it be the most dominant one? Or will it be named with the and others? These and other important questions about our faith beyond this atmosphere are what the field of xenotheology concerns itself with. And that brings us to the subject of today's video. The June 2021 Congressional report on the so-called UAPs. UFOs to many of you, ancient threats to some of us. Now, there are many things that are in this report, but since this is the first video, I will focus on just 5 things. The 5 things which I think are just bunk, just jargon, mumbo-jumbo that is being pushed out there to make the average person think that there is some intelligence in these intelligence communities, when in fact they are covering up a lot about the reality that is happening in our skies and in our oceans all day, every day. This video is part ministry, and I think it is very important for me to put that right up front before I start talking about these 5 things. This is a Christian-centric truth because we believe in a truth that is always linked to Jesus and our faith. And this is something that my husband and I have debated for well over a year, since before he started his PhD. Because he is of the opinion that people are not ready to have Christian-centric discussions about space. And so he set me a challenge. Can I get more than a couple of thousand views on any video of any topic? And so I chose this topic because every time I turn on the TV, they're talking about these UAPs. So today, I give this video to you, both as commentary, but also as ministry. And if you like it, please like it, share it, and ask me questions in the comments. I will do my level best to reply, whether in those comments or with other videos. Now let's begin. Transmedium vehicles versus transdimensional entities. Now, I put this first because it is the most important misunderstanding, or some might argue misinformation, that is being shared about these entities in our skies. In the report, they talk about these vehicles as excellent transmedium vessels, being able to fly in the sky and possibly space as well, while also being able to maneuver underwater. The U.S. intelligence has a lot of information about their capabilities above land or sea, while other foreign agencies, such as the Russians, have a lot of information on their underwater capability. For the average person, this is mind-blowing. We can't even get a car to work on all terrain. You need to have different tires for asphalt, for snow drifts and sand dunes. Now you're being told that there's a vehicle that can fly really fast and swim fast too? That is totally mind-blowing. Now, before you get yourself too excited now, here's a quick question. Why is it transmedium instead of all medium, or even just multi-medium? Because, like I said, you can get all-terrain tires for your truck, and they'll do a decent enough job on dust or snow or on the road. They're not trans-surface tires. They're just tires. Now, if we look into our dictionaries, we'll see that trans, aside from being a hotly debated sexual term that we'll have to really discuss in a future video, trans means to go across, or beyond, or through. So these craft are going beyond or through different mediums. So they're flying through the air, they're crossing into the water, and they're diving beyond the depths that we can detect them. But here's a simple question. Why have we not observed them floating, or even just rolling on the ground? There are plenty of videos showing them tumbling through the air. There's evidence of them doing hundreds of knots under the sea, but they can't float on the water. I have seen many accounts of them landing here and there, floating in the air near and far, but never a single report out at sea of them floating or them moving across the ground. But they claim that these are transmedium transmedium vehicle, but all they can do is fly and swim. Now, this may seem really simple, but this is fundamental. The fact that they cannot interact with the surfaces of Earth is very important. I'll repeat that. The fact that these so-called vehicles cannot interact with water or the Earth in any way that allows them to either roll or float is very important. It means that they cannot interact with some types of matter directly, which is proof of what they are in reality. A reality that many quantum scientists and researchers and even theoretical physicists have pointed to already. These are, in fact, not highly advanced craft, but rather hyperdimensional entities. Not only are they hyperdimensional, they are also living creatures. Now, I'm planning a whole video series on this, but I can guarantee you that their movement and their behavior can be better explained by zoologists than by aeronautical engineers. You hear naval officers talk about these objects swarming their vessels. They don't talk about them approaching in a coordinated fashion or deploying in a specific squadron pattern. No, they talk about them swarming, and that is because the human brain interprets what it knows. So when these seamen see things that are acting like a swarm, they will say that they swarm. They swarm like locusts or bees or any other behavior that the person reporting it has seen before. So these are people at sea who have seen armadas and fleets and squadrons, but they choose to use the word swarm. But then when the report comes out, it gets interpreted that these objects are flying in a formation. And that makes us think that they are machines. They will use words like no propulsion, no control surfaces, no wings. Perfect narratives to scare you into thinking that it's a Chinaman inside that craft or a Russian in a flying saucer. But the truth, in reality, is far worse. These are flying entities, dimension warping creatures, far scarier than some scared 19-year-old pilot from another country. A 100 to 1,000 years more advanced than we are. Now, the Wright brothers made their first flight in 1903. The first supersonic flight was in 1947. Less than 50 years. 50 years it took from dreaming about flight to breaking the sound barrier. Now, the UAP report tells us the technology is between 100 and 1,000 years ahead of our current capabilities. 1,000 years! The World Wide Web, which revolutionized the way we interact with the internet, was invented in 1989. That's just 30 years. 1,000 years, they'll tell you. How would we even be able to perceive them if they were 1,000 years more advanced than we are? When something that was invented 30 years ago has completely changed our way of living. In 100 years, we'll be living on the moon, Mars. We might not be thriving, but we'll be there. So what is this technology that can be 1,000 years in the future? I don't even want to dig deep into how ridiculous it actually sounds to quote a number like 1,000 years. And like I've already said, these aren't ships. They're alive. These are creatures adapted on a genetic path that most science doesn't even recognize or understand anymore. However, there are many scholars and regular people who know exactly where these creatures come from. All you need to do is look into Genesis, or any of the ancient texts from all around the world. If you read about leviathans and giants roaming the lands in the time of the Garden of Eden, the prophet Ezekiel talks about creatures that were a wheel within a wheel, and when they went in any of their directions without turning as they went. Now, if that is not a similarity between the accounts of the Navy and the accounts of a prophet, I don't know what is. Now, you need to understand that these creatures that are mentioned in Ezekiel were on God's side, whereas the creatures that have descended here, cast down after the war of heaven, are on the enemy's side. An enemy that has an army that has lived for thousands of years, an army with demons and giants and creatures that appear to be wheels and tic-tacs and other things that have been known for thousands of years, not advanced thousands of years. We need to stop being insecure in ourselves, thinking that all things we don't understand have to be alien technology or something that's just so advanced. Sometimes, and in fact in this particular time, what we're seeing is not technology. What we are seeing isn't the future. It is actually the ancient world itself. These creatures disappeared from our scientific records, but they remain within our consciousness, and more particularly the consciousness of those who practice the occult, as well as the corrupt leadership who are leading us to believe that there is something that is happening in a future war, rather than reminding us this is an old enemy in a long-known war, a war for our eternal soul. Now, of course, if we're talking war, they'll talk about nuclear powers, nuclear weapons, the threat of certain destruction. Apparently, these vehicles are drawn to nuclear sites. Now, just a quick reminder in our Bible. Genesis chapter 19, we are introduced to the end of the decadent and sinful cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Cities that were so vile that their inhabitants wanted to rape and abuse the Lord's angels. They were so bold because they had perceived creatures that in their minds were more powerful than angels. That's why they felt so confident to demand the Lord's angels. They had experienced the mighty power of transdimensional creatures that they used to see every day, because their evil leaders and sorcerers were using these creatures that met their end in that burning sulfur that overtook those cities. Ever since then, those creatures had become very cautious of any weapons that might be as destructive as the Lord's sulfur which rained on that day that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. During the Second World War, these creatures, as well as their occult handlers, were introduced to a new and terrible power, the nuclear weapon. Over the subsequent years, they have seen numerous nuclear tests performed mainly in the Pacific Ocean, the very place where many of these unidentified aerial phenomena have been spotted, often near nuclear weapons and systems. While this is as scary as the military intelligences will claim, it is also a glimmer of hope. For what it tells us is that these creatures, they are scared of our nuclear capability. And in this regard, we have an upper hand. If it ever came to an all-out war, we would be able to destroy these demonic forces with nuclear weapons. Unfortunately for us, however, many of those with the power to deploy these nuclear weapons are themselves under the influence of these demonic forces. And so the enemy has double protection. Not only do they control those who launch the weapons, but they have also found a way to affect the nuclear weapons themselves. Now make no mistake, this is not a foreign human threat, even though they have human agents working for them. Men and women who have been possessed and tempted and turned away from the ways of the Lord. And so when the report talks about the potential of foreign adversaries, that is only because that is how they understand the world. They are intelligence defense officials, and they have been defending us against foreign threats. And when they see something, they will automatically think foreign threat. They will not think demonic adversary. But we know. We Christians know, we appreciate the history of this demonic war. We know that ever since the fallen descended here, cast down by the Lord when their foolish leader Lucifer was defeated, we know they're at war with us. Humans in general, but us God-fearing Christians in particular. And so make no mistake, there's no human hand driving those craft, no Russian, no Chinese, or anything else. But that doesn't make the threat any less dire or any less real. Those creatures are part of many tools and weapons that the enemy has against us. And now that they have been called out, they are on the defensive. And there is nothing more deadly than a cornered demon. They will use many tactics, chief among them misinformation. But they will use other tactics such as kidnapping and even direct military engagement to make sure that they maintain their so-called superiority in the skies and in the oceans. But it does not stop there. No, the threat doesn't stop in our skies or even in our oceans, because the real reason these creatures are way more active now than before is because they are smart. They're smart, and they are aware of the fact that we are about to become a multi-planetary species. Their demonic network understands that we are close to building colonies on the moon, Mars, and even beyond. Now, how tempting would it be for those working in agencies tasked to get us to those distant planets to use so-called technology to leapfrog human ingenuity and human knowledge. And that is potentially why you are seeing far more space exploration projects being done not only by American scientists, but many other nations in places that are so-called third world, because some of these places have been offered so-called technology, which we know is actually demonic transdimensional power. They have been offered this technology as a way to leapfrog genuine human American thought processes. And they're using this technology, or planning to use this technology, so that they might be able to get to the moon in a matter of minutes, or to Mars in a matter of short days, and even further. All on the back of so-called technology. And because the Congressional report is going to support and corroborate this narrative, no one will question it. When they see these entities flying into the sky, no one will say these people are floating on the backs or in the insides of demons. They will say they are flying on human ingenuity, which is a lie. And that is the real problem, the crux of the challenge we have in xenotheology. We're being told to worry about the United States, and only the United States. But in reality, these creatures and their demonic handlers are playing a game that they've been playing for decades, edging us closer and closer to a point where we can help them to escape Earth, which was their prison. The Lord cast them down here as punishment, but also as a prison for them to live out their eternity for their crimes in heaven. And yet they're edging us closer to breaking free of our Earth, which is their prison, so that they might spread their chaos and infect not only the solar system, but beyond. Now, as Christians, we are not only called to save our own spirit, we are also called to be responsible for all those things that God has created. God's benevolent hand not only made the oceans and the land, but also the stars in the sky. We have dominion over all of these things. So not only this planet, but also space itself. And so when we have transdimensional creatures with demonic agents that are trying to break free from their prison, which is this land, and they're trying to go to a place where there will be less oppression on them, we have a responsibility as Christians to stop them. And that is ultimately what we need to do. And you will see platforms like this and many other channels start to come up and talk about these things, as hard as it is to say this to people, to say that these demons are trying to trick us into thinking that there is some harmless technology that can be harnessed to take us to the sky, that we could just research this, that we could just capture one of these craft, reverse engineer this knowledge, and then use that technology to reach the skies. And that'll be, yay, us humans, we are so great for the universe. That is what we are being told, when the reality is these are demons that are manipulating our own human desire to be great, to be explorers, to be protagonists, to be living in the stars. They're exploiting this so that we might use them, and in so doing, free them of their shackles and bonds here on Earth. And sadly, in that way, that'll lead us to ruin our own solar system. And not only that, it will lead us to break a covenant with the Lord. This is deadly serious, as confusing and scary as it sounds. And this is perhaps the first time you've heard someone lay it out like this, and it'll take you time to digest. And I hope to break this up into more digestible content over the coming weeks and months and years, and however long it takes for us to be able to break through the misinformation, break through the lies, break through the congressional reports that are only telling us a small part of the reality, and through the spreading of true knowledge and through true ministry and the Lord's will, we will be able to undo these demonic forces' mission. We'll be able to thwart them and make sure that they're unable to win at a time when they think that it is inevitable that they will win. Because they cannot, because we have the Lord on our side. And so this is just the beginning. My first video. I hope that it is received with open minds and accepting souls. And if you've got any questions, as I said, I know this is complicated and this seems scary. But if you have questions, just put them in the comments. I'll try to reply to them, whether in the comments or with other videos. I do intend to break some of this up and give more evidence, more ministry, that you might be able to understand what is actually happening. But together we can stop this. Together we can make the land, sea, and the stars safe. But only if you'll join me. Like, comment, subscribe.